Welcome, everybody. I'm excited today for a conversation I get to have with a good friend of mine, Clint Smith, who is an overnight, 12-year success in your software company.
17.
17 years. Shoot, man, I undershot it. He's written a book that I've read and written about. Some of you all might have followed that. Great book. Read it in 5 days. Really actionable advice in there that I'm, stoked about. I hope you all check that out as well. But Clint's got a really interesting story. And before we jump into it, I just want to remind everybody why we do what we do here and why we just give this content away. In the corporate battlefield, we call it a battlefield because there is a battle between good and evil. And most of us are very aware of that. If you're not aware of it, you're choosing to ignore it. And I just hope that, as we help people build their wealth and build their leadership capability, that they use the influence that they have from that and go do some good. So hopefully this will be a value to you all. Well, I know it'll be a value to you all, but I hope that we can go and do some extraordinary good with it. So Clint, I know you really well. I know you're a family man. I know you run a great company that we're a client of. I know you can write a great book. But I would love for you to share with everybody your story from, being an investment banker all the way to now being a software company owner and operator, and just any highlights you think would be relevant for folks looking to grow their leadership.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me again, Skylar. So I figured out that I was an entrepreneur in college. I went to University of Florida, go Gators, and while I was there, I was in this intro to accounting class that had about 700 kids in it. And I saw that there was a guy named Lance who was doing this like large mass tutoring sessions for an equally sized or maybe bigger class in intro to statistics. And he basically would have a review session, have people come and pay him some money, and then you'd walk out and make a bunch of money. And I was like, I think I could do that with accounting. So I passed out some flyers and people came. This was after I finished the class, obviously, like the next semester. People came to the class and I got them ready and they did really well. And they paid me $20 a person for this review. And I'd walk out with, $1,000, $2,000. And so there was the wealth piece was cool, but like the part that I really enjoyed was that I created something out of nothing. And then when I saw people around, they're like, hey, thanks so much. That was so helpful. I did great on the test. And at that moment, I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I also knew that I wasn't quite ready for prime time. Like, let me just go start my own business. So I thought about what kind of job would put me in the best position to be able to start a business in the future. And at the time, there wasn't a whole lot going on in tech, especially in Florida. It was 2001. So I looked at investment banking, and somehow I got an investment banking job in Florida at a place called Raymond James in Tampa Bay area. And I did that for 3 years. It was a 3-year program. And then they force you out of the program after 3 years. Normally you go back to business school, get your MBA. And I liked that because I knew that would force me to kind of make a decision at that point to go start a business. So that's what I did. Instead of when everyone else was going to get their MBA, I said, no, I'm going to invest in myself and go start this business. It didn't happen right away. I moved to Colorado. I had a moment in my life where I was forcing it, trying to get the business going, and it wasn't quite ready. So I decided to take a step back. I went and got a job at a restaurant. I met my wife there. I became a 5th grade teacher. It was a dream of mine to always teach. So I had some great life experiences. And while I was doing that, I started to stew on this idea of something in the career space. I'd always been intrigued myself about just what kind of career should I have? And just the idea of like, you spend so much time working. So it's a huge part of your life. And I was always one of those guys that people came to when they needed help with the resume or career advice and stuff like that. So I started looking at the job market and I saw that there was a lot of opportunity for improvement. Back then, the jobs were all posted on Monster, Career Builder. It was, I know you're a military guy. It was like, they call them requisitions. A lot of stuff in the business world, I feel like came over from the military, and nothing wrong with that. But like requisitions, basically like listing all the stuff that you need as an employer. Like, this is what we need. And as you know, there's a lot more to it than that. You need to attract people. You need to sell them on why would I want to come? I'm a talented guy. Why would I want to come work for you? And I thought that was missing. So I started exploring ways to be able to solve that. The first idea I had was like to create some sort of interactive experience to show someone what it was like to work there at an office, and people would just pay me for the content or whatever. The feedback I got was like, that sounds cool, but I think there's something else you can do here that could be more powerful. We really need help generating applicants. So I created these personalized microsites that would I'd go and I started this thing in my apartment in Austin. I'd research candidates, find them on these databases, and then invite them to apply to a job. And through a personalized microsite that basically explained the whole thing and what it was like to work there. And it was like a lead generation service. Fast forward about 4 years, it's like 2011, I decided to transition to become more of a full-on software company. We had built some software to facilitate that lead generation service, but it was just stuff we were using. I changed it up so that I wanted to work with smaller businesses and help them. I had gone through some hiring ups and downs myself, and I felt like I had developed a pretty good system of hiring. I wanted to make it available for other small business owners. So, and right around that time is when there was a lot of transition happening from kind of monster career builder into more like Indeed and LinkedIn. It was a big transition time, and it was great. We were pretty much the first small business applicant tracking system that was out there, and today we've grown to serve. I think your email said 30,000 small business clients. I was wrong. It's 60,000 small business clients. So we're growing rapidly. I need to stay on top of that, and my marketing team needs to keep me in check. But that's as concise as I can get for 19 years of stuff.
Yeah. Well, I just know from knowing you too, there's a bit of every time you solved a new problem, you had a bit of a spike in your growth rate. So
we really, our first big software client was State Farm Insurance. So we got a bunch of agents on there, and what we realized was that the applicant tracks and the software was cool, but like our distribution model that we had figured out was really the key. And that's, I think, for other people listening, like sometimes having a good product is important, obviously, but like, I think what our distribution was what really set us apart and allowed us to really grow. So we had these State Farm agents, and they had sales leaders, like a territory of sales leaders, 40 agents per territory, and they wanted them to hire more salespeople. So I worked with the sales leaders, and they sold the product for me. And I started looking at other industries like that, like in franchising and associations and other groups. And that's pretty much been our niche and where we've thrived.
Yeah. All right. Well, I do like to set the table just because we're going to have a leadership conversation. I'd like to hear what your definition of leadership is.
For me, I like to distinguish between leadership and management. I'd like to hope that all leaders or all managers are also leaders, but that isn't always true, as you know. And for me, a leader is someone who really serves a team toward a greater good. Is probably the most simple way that I could say it. So I have people all levels of my company that I would consider to be leaders. Yeah,
and you wouldn't know it unless you knew you really well. But if someone just met you and then you moved on, they wouldn't get this right away. But I know you're a very good salesperson. And how much, because it was all you selling in the beginning. How much of how much of the sales practice do you think helped you become, a better leader down the road?
Oh, I think like being able to connect with people and being able to sell them on a vision, because early on I didn't really have much. Like I sold State Farm before I even had a product. So I had to get them excited about it. And I think for me, like people have told me like I'm a genuine guy. I don't try to like put on too much smooze or whatever. So there's a level of trust that happens there. Like, hey, I believe this guy's going to do something special, and I want to be part of that. And I think that like that translates directly into leadership.
Yeah. And so you leverage your genuineness to do your sales too, then, and that.
I think so. Yeah. Look, that's my style. Like I don't try to put it on too thick or whatever else. Like, look, sometimes I have to push myself a little bit to get more excited and to have that, bring the enthusiasm and the energy. But like for me, I think people, they see, hey, this guy, really wants to do something special, and I want to be part of it.
Yeah. Cool. your first handful of employees that you just started the business with stuck around for a very long time.
Yes.
What do you think kept them with you for so long?
I would say so. So I had a couple employees I could think of in particular that stayed 10, 12 years right off the bat. And we've got several more now that are hitting like 10-year anniversaries. And I
Yeah.
think I believed in them. I saw something in them that maybe they hadn't even seen in themselves yet, or that others hadn't seen in them. And then I invested in them. Most of
Yeah.
these people came to me as just, labor, someone who's ready to help out however they needed help. And that's kind of what you need when you're a startup. But I said, hey, how about you seem to be really strong in this area? I think you could become one of our engineers. How about I help pay for you to go to a boot camp? So it's like I gave them a shot and believed in them. And I think that I got a lot of loyalty and hard work in return.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to ask this question a little further down our conversation, but I think it makes sense to ask it now. I mean, how much time do you think you spend on creating a vision for the people on your team? So you just shared how you shared with that person. You had a vision for their
Yeah.
future for them.
Right.
How much time do you think you spend on that?
I mean, it's my primary job now.
Yeah.
I've gotten rid of just about every other responsibility to where we use the EOS system. The book Traction explains that. I
Yeah.
think it's great. And their idea is that at the top, they've got a visionary and an integrator. So the visionary sets the vision, the integrator makes it happen. And that Jenny is our integrator, and she does a great job. And that's freed me up to spend a lot of time on vision. And I've formalized the process more, Skylar, where we do a 3-year vision and get everyone aligned on that. And that's how we get organized as a team.
Yeah. How often do you think that 3-year vision changes? I mean, I know you'll update it,
Yeah.
quarterly or annually, but just as a leader, like how often do you see it kind of moving?
We're
Even if
always
it's
evolving it, right? Like the North Star doesn't change too much with what we want to accomplish, right? Like
Yeah.
our big thing is really helping organizations grow and reach their potential. So like that doesn't change too much. And then some of the other big pieces that we've decided to pursue, not just helping these businesses hire and great people, but we want to help them retain them as well. So there's some big items that don't change too much, but like when you get a little bit more into the how, then yeah, there's a lot more flexibility there. And I also don't try to be too prescriptive about that, because that's what I want our team to help us figure out, because they're the ones that that allows them to have more ownership in it. So there are changes all the time, but like the North Star stuff doesn't change too often. And we do, for us, this is, more of a procedural thing. Like we decided to just stick with like 3-year increments and not like continually push the 3 years out every year. So, we're 1 year into our 3-year program right now. So there'll be a time where, we might only be 6 months out from the due date. But at that time, I'm sure I'll already be talking about what the next iteration is of the 3-year vision.
Yeah. Just because I'm interested, what's the risk in keeping it continuously 3 years out? I mean, is it a progress thing that you're worried about not recognizing the progress you make, or what? Why do you?
I think maybe for us, it felt like a little bit of a moving target, and you never get to actually celebrate getting there.
Yeah.
And it aligns with what I do personally as well. Like before I started doing this, I would write like a 3-year kind of vision mantra type thing that I would kind of review with myself in the morning, that just covered all aspects of my life. And they're not exactly lined up on the dates, but it's the same idea of like, hey, at the end of that 3 years, I'm going to reflect and create something new. It's just, I could argue either way, but it's what we decided to do.
Yeah. So you lead through the EOS model, but if I've never read the book Traction, what are the core components of that? That's like, okay, well, if you're leading a company effectively, you're doing these things, and this book happens to give you the model, but what would those things?
It does, yeah. I think it's a lot of it is like getting, as the top leader, you've got to make sure you're real clear on your vision, your mission, and your values first and foremost. And then from there you have communication rhythms. You have your strategy to execute those things, and then you have a communication rhythm to get into routine. So it's like 1-year goals, quarterly rocks, and then you have weekly, they call L10 meetings, That's a certain structure that you have with your team meetings to be able to execute. And then they have other things like as far as like what your data should look like, what your people should look like. They use something called an accountability chart, which is similar to an organizational chart, but they add a little bit more of like make sure it's more defined by the function as opposed to the person. Kind of like, let's make sure we have the right seats, and then we get the right people in the right seats. Those are most of the pieces that I think are critical. And for us, the one thing I'd say is that the first time I did it, I'm an entrepreneur, right? And entrepreneurs are naturally like tinkerers. Oh, I can make this better. And the first time we did it, I did that, and I wasn't as successful because we spent all of our energy tinkering with it. The next time around, we said, let's just implement it. We hired an outside consultant to help us implement it. And we said, we're going to follow this thing to a T, at least for the first couple of years. And then we can adjust. And what that did was it allowed us to put all of our energy into our business as opposed to like figuring out how we're going to actually run some things. And I saw a huge boost from that.
Yeah. The L10 meeting. Just real quick. Yeah. Cause this is your only weekly meeting that you have with your team, right? Like right. What's going to that?
Yeah. The structure is pretty simple. There's like an icebreaker thing at the beginning where you share like a personal and business best. And then we go into a review of the scorecard for the team, and you go through and kind of say whether things are on track or off track. You review your quarterly rocks or goals. There's team headlines that you would list. You review previous to-dos or commitments that people made on the team. And then the meat of it, that's meant to be, 20 minutes or less, right? Depending on the length of your meeting. We do ours for 2 hours now. A lot of them are 60 to 90 minutes. But the main thing is this IDS, which is, I believe, stands for identify, decide, discuss, and solve. Thank you. And essentially, you've got a big issues list or whatever it is. And then there's a way to identify, okay, what's the most important issue? And you dig into the issue, you discuss it. We use this idea of like diverge and converge, like try to get as many options out there in terms of what ways that we could handle it, and then come together and make a decision. And if we get through 2 or 3, sometimes 1 or 2 or 3 issues in a session that are the right issues, and we have a good resolution, to me, that's a level 10 meeting. So at the end, we rate the meeting, and it's, if you get all 10s, then you had a great meeting.
Yeah. No, I love this format because a lot of the accountability is taken care of, right? If you run that L10 meeting the right way and you got everything structured with your your to-dos and all that stuff, it ought to just take care of itself.
Well, and that's a nice thing about this. Like, I am not naturally like a strong, assertive manager. And like, I have, I think, a little bit of an aversion to conflict, and having structure like this helps, right? Like if we have the scoreboard, I don't need to ask that tough question in the same way. Like, hey, did you do what you're going to do? Like, I'm like, let's take a look at the scoreboard. It's what we do every week. And then it just naturally happens. Right. So for me, it's been great. And I'm also just I'm a natural like inventor type personality, right? So like if I didn't have something to rein me in, I'd be all over the place. So I really like having the structure. Yeah.
All right. So you mentioned Jenny. She's your integrator.
That's right.
You guys are both leaders in the organization, but how is she different than you? Because you clearly you have 2 different jobs. But like characteristic wise, how is she different? And then maybe how are you guys the same? That makes you great leaders.
Yeah, we have the same values, right? We believe in the same thing, and we're really passionate about the mission. She is much more of an execution person. She's going to be able to take a big idea and break it down into small parts and get all of the team aligned. She was a percussionist for a long time. She played, I believe she was in the UT band, even University of Texas. And so she's a drummer. So like, we like to say that she sets the drum beat for the organization, right? Everyone's kind of going in the same direction. And look, she's great at it. And she strikes a great balance between being, staying high level when she needs to be, but also rolling up her sleeves and getting in there alongside the team to execute when needed.
Yeah.
And I can do some of those things too, but like I'm not going to be as organized with some of that stuff. And I tend to, lose interest or kind of like, go chase something new sooner than she would. I can do it. I did it for a long time, but she's better at it.
Yeah. I can completely identify with that. I mean, I love I love the hunt and I love to pin it down, but like after I've got it pinned down, I kind of lose interest too. I need somebody to come finish it off.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Um, and so she's more of the planning component to your leadership team. Is there a model that she uses to do the planning?
Yeah, like what we do is, again, it's mostly structured through the EOS, right? We have
Yeah.
the 3-year vision, and then we do annual planning meetings. And one thing that we did recently, Skylar, is we felt like we weren't executing that well on an annual level. We weren't hitting our numbers the way we wanted to and achieving some things. So we decided to shrink the circle and break it down into 6 months. So now we do 6-month planning cycles. And we may switch back to a year, but like for me, I was like, look, if we're having some difficulty predicting the future, let's kind of look into smaller pieces and do that. And that's helped a lot. And then within the quarter, we have rocks, and one of her main jobs is to make sure that we have the right rock set to achieve these bigger goals, and that we're hitting at least 80% of them in a quarter. We don't want to hit 100% necessarily, because I think that might lead to people sandbagging and not really going for it as much. But the sweet spot that we found is 80%. Some people have used 70. I've heard different things.
Yeah. Okay. So, we talked about vision, we talked about planning, we talked a little bit about accountability. It's just kind of baked into your operating model.
Yes.
How do you kind of keep oversight and manage the culture of the company? Because
Yeah. It's
who you guys are.
Oh, sorry, I think you froze for just a second on me. All right, you're back. The culture piece, I think, is really important. It's all through our values, Skylar. So we have core values that we use from the entire life cycle of an employee, right? We advertise the jobs with them. We use them in the hiring process. We talk about them extensively when we're onboarding someone. They're on their performance reviews that we go over with people quarterly. We encourage people to use them when they're recognizing people, like we call them internally shout outs, sharing gratitude, things like that. So it's really ingrained in our culture to be able to do that. And then, we look at it when we're promoting people or when we ultimately have to let someone go. And we do that. We do a quarterly employee engagement survey that we review. And then we have a culture club team, which is a committee that has representatives from all of our individual teams, and they get together and kind of share thoughts and pass that up to the leadership team as well. And, the biggest thing is we try to listen, right? Like you create a culture where one of our core values is speak up, step up, right? If there's something that you think we can be doing better, speak up about it. And if you can, step up and do something about it. And that empowerment, you have to have a trusting culture, right? Like you can't just have people be afraid of what's going to happen if they do that. But if you do that right, then they'll tell you a lot of things, and then you just have to listen and follow through on things and help get them fixed and show them that we're heading in the right direction.
Yeah. Do you, just short question, but how far down the organization do you run the EOS? I mean, is
all the way?
Yeah. So they're doing it all the way down.
Yeah. So every team has their own, runs their own kind of program and their own L10, and there's modified versions, but everyone has that.
Yeah. So
everyone has their own scorecard and rocks. Some groups set team rocks as opposed to individual rocks, which in some cases I think that's okay. If it's a team that kind of generally does a lot of the same stuff, like our hiring experts team, which is what we call our people who are on the phone and email with support. I don't believe they set individual rocks. Theirs are more team based.
Yeah. So there's lots of opportunity to speak up.
Yeah, totally. And that's just part of our culture. That's part of our values. Like, and that it's an extension of how I am and how I like to lead, right? I'm kind of like, look, I didn't hire you. I hired you because I think that you're smart and that you're going to help us contribute. Like, I don't have all the answers. Like, help us figure it out. Here's generally what we want to do, where we want to go. That's the vision part. Help us figure out how to get there.
Yeah. And so these companies that you're helping hire great talent, and I know you wrote about this, but when they come to you and they haven't really defined their values, how do you guys teach them how to go home and do the homework of like coming up with what the values are?
Yeah, it's it's a process that we had to learn a little bit the hard way, because the first iteration that we did, we had too many. So that's one thing I'd say, is don't have too many values, because like for us, it's like, you got to be with a person, they've got to be 100%. Like you got to check every value. And we had 7 values before, and that led to people saying, oh, I think 6 out of 7 sounds good, but it wasn't. So that's first thing. Don't set too many, and they can't be aspirational. They should be what you're really doing. The advice, and I talked about this for the book, and I gave him credit, but what I really think the advantage, Patrick Lencioni talks about this in his book. It's like, take a look at the people that you really view as your model employees, the ones that you think most embrace your values, and what are the attributes that they have that really stand out to you. But then you have to do a test and say, okay, who are some people that maybe, they still work for you, but they're not really living the values. And do they also demonstrate those values that you identified in those top people? If they do, then that can't be a good value, because that doesn't distinguish between the two. So it's a little bit of a process you have to go through. But then a lot of it for us was narrowing it down, right? We settled on 4 values: be kind, speak up, step up, keep growing, and work together, win together. And for us, I think people would tell you, like, hey, these really describe how we are, right? Like and if the values are too generic and you could ascribe them to just about any company, then I don't think you're doing a good enough job. Like, we work together, win together. We're a very collaborative company. And we've had people, even a leader recently who ended up leaving, was like, look, this is very different than where I came from. This doesn't work for me. I kind of like more everyone stays in their lane type of thing. Nothing wrong with that, but it's just not who we are, right?
That's great.
So that was something that we actually should have identified and looked in more closely during the hiring process, but you don't get them all right. But that's the idea, is eventually we were able to identify and say, I think I know what the issue is here. There's some values alignment stuff.
Yeah. Well, and you're 100% remote, right? Your business.
We are. Yes.
Yeah.
So we went. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, what challenges has that created, and what have you leaned on to make sure that you stay strong, even though you guys aren't seeing each other physically every day?
We went remote just like everyone else did during COVID, and we had already started flirting with hiring some people outside of Austin. Software engineers in particular. It was a very tough market to hire in Austin. Lots of companies came and were soaking up all the talent, and the big Facebook, Salesforce, Google. And so we had a hard time competing. So we were already hiring from the outside, but then we're like, let's just go for it and hire people. Let's just hire the best people from wherever. That turned out to be a great idea. And then the team really liked the idea of working from home. And what I didn't want to do was straddle and be like, oh, we're kind of like, we've got a home base, but then we got a bunch of remote people. Because I think what happens is you end up having 2 different cultures in that case. I already had some remote people working with me before, and they were like, COVID's the best thing ever, because we kind of feel like we're on an equal playing field now with everyone else. Before, we always felt like the outsiders.
Yeah.
So the stuff that's a challenge is the stuff that you hear, from everyone, right? The collaboration and just the connection piece is big. And then I found that it's harder to hire someone that's really junior and hasn't done the job before, and to be able to train them up in the same way, because, you can't ride alongside someone in the same way. So with that, we do an annual summit. We just had one in Boulder, Colorado this summer, which was awesome. And it was cool for me because that was, I said I moved to Colorado. It's kind of like, that's where I was living when I met my wife and where I was first dreaming about the business. And to come back, it was really 20 years later, I think 19 years later, to be like, oh, look what we accomplished. This is so cool. But it was just great energy to get everyone together for the team. So I'd say you got to get people together more often. You got to hire people that really know that they want to do remote and they've done it before, and they're professional. They know how to handle themselves and take care of business. Because I'm not someone, you can't, if you're one of those managers, leaders that's always like, I need to know what everyone's doing all the time, then remote is a challenge, because you're always going to be stressing out thinking about that. But for me, I'm a trusting guy. Plus, I was like, look, we've got scorecards. We've got a system to be. That was the real impetus to put EOS in place. I was like, look, we need to really stay on top of this.
Yeah.
And then just hiring really talented people. What I found is that the remote thing, especially now that fewer companies are remote, we're becoming a little more the exception, and we're getting a ton of talent applying to our jobs. And for me, that talent, the quality of the talent outweighs the cons of not being all together in one place.
Yeah. Um, I while I was listening to you speak, I thought of just me and Kristen in our marriage, and how we dated long distance for 4 years before we actually were together. And
Right.
I would say that we communicate better than most any other relationship I know, because I think we had to learn like remotely how to communicate with
Yes.
each other. So I bet your
You have to
team.
have really good processes and things. And there's, some of it can feel overwhelming. Like we're very much like an open communications team. So there's a lot of stuff to consume, and you got to find, it's hard to stay on top of it all in some ways. So you got to find the right balance there, because you can go too far the other way with that as well.
Yeah. Yep. Well, just a fun question here. Because somebody asked me it once and it stumped me, but do you think you lead your family the same way that you lead your business? And if not, how's that different?
It's tougher at home. It's not.
You're not running EOS.
First of all, I'm not in charge, so let's just establish that. And then, look, it's we do. I did push my wife and kids to kind of like adopt some family values, so I've gotten that far, and we use those in recognizing the kids. One of ours is around kindness and promoting peace, and we do like a weekly kindness jar. Like each night at dinner, we kind of put things. If someone did something kind for someone, we'll do that and have a little drawing at the end of the week. So we've gotten some things in there, but we're way less outcome focused than I am in my business. But you know what? I think it's been great. And, my wife and I are on the same page with what we want. We talk about long-term vision and where we want to go with our families. We obviously made a big move. We moved to Costa Rica in about 3 years ago, and just kind of had this vision for what we want our life to be, and to really build it more around community and being in a smaller town. So like we're doing a lot of the same things. It's just not quite the same.
Yeah. I like it. What are you doing today to just keep yourself, improving and just growing as a leader? What do you find yourself doing the most?
Oh man, I'm always thinking about, like, as our business grows, it's growing fairly rapidly. And so I've always got to be able to level up. And the leader that I was when we started is very different than the leader I am now, and the leader I need to be tomorrow. So I think about that a lot. I read a classic recently, Start With Why, and Simon Sinek, and it was one of those. You ever read there's like a right book at the right time for you? I was like, man, this is the book I needed to read right now. And I'm adjusting a lot of our messaging and internally, but then also externally, more around why, right? Like instead of just saying, hey, CareerPlug helps you hire, retain people, it's more about like, hey, CareerPlug is here to help you grow, right? You invest in CareerPlug because you want to grow your business, you want to grow yourself, and we're here to support you with that. That's the bigger why that I identified. And I feel like as soon as I figured that out, that unlocked a bunch of stuff, and I'm still running with that right now. So that's the big thing for me.
That's good. All right. Yeah. I mean, I'd say 9 out of my 10 ideas that I have on a daily basis are from what I read that morning, and I try to read every morning. So that's good.
No, you're obviously, you're a huge reader, and it's really great that you send out those summaries and are able to motivate other people to do the same.
Yeah. All right. Let's shift gears a little bit. I think, John Maxwell says leaders is influence, right? Leadership is influence. And, I think building wealth is for this world, the way it is today, a very influential thing. If you could show, how to build wealth and lead in such a manner that you can show them, hey, if you go lead others this way, you can build wealth too, that you can be more influential. And so I know some success has come to you as you've grown your business in the wealth category. Mm-hmm. And I just want to, right off the bat, just say, well, what's a good definition of wealth for you?
For me, it's about wealth is about freedom. It's about convenience. It's about me being able to do what I want more than anything else. And then if there's times where I can make things more convenient for myself, for my family, or people I care about, then I've got the ability to do that. it also allows us to give a lot, right? And that's a big part of who we are.
Yeah. All right. So the freedom, the ability to give, these things that you've received from focusing on and building your wealth. Why do you
Yeah.
think those things are important for leaders to have?
I think that there's you want to be in a position of strength when you're a leader, right? And you don't want to have you don't want to have easy temptations to cut corners or stray, compromise.
Yeah.
And I think when you've got some wealth, it's a lot easier to kind of stay on the right path and do the right thing. You'd hope that you would do that regardless, right? But it puts you in a really good position to be able to make the right decisions and to lead through others. And I think also there's people, you can show people what success and hard work looks like. And there's obviously people are money motivated at different levels, but that's something that I think will inspire people working with you as well.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think tactically it's kind of hard when you're starting this journey, right? So think of
Yeah.
you and myself when we're in our mid-20s, and you're trying to figure out like, okay, well, I've got a vision for me professionally, but
Right.
how am I going to go create wealth? First, do you think it's important that somebody diversifies or stays niche? And then, just based on your answer, why do you think so? And how have you kind of implemented that?
When it comes to wealth, like right now, like if you were to look at my portfolio or whatever, like I'm an investor myself, first and foremost, right? I believe like most of the value, my net worth is tied up in my business. I do try to diversify away from that, but like since that is a fairly high risk thing, just having it all concentrated there. The other side of it is more low risk, cash and basic fixed income investments, things like that. And with interest rates being higher right now, that's pretty nice too. There's no reason to take on more risk for me. So as I get a little bit older, or if I ever decide to sell the business or kind of change some things on that end, then yeah, obviously I think I'm going to have to look at some of that a little bit differently.
Yeah. How often do you find yourself sitting down to like have a meeting about estate planning for yourself? Are you doing that on a frequent basis, or what? Just what are you doing there?
I have a wealth track, like a tracker that I use, that where I'll kind of assess things. I actually track every month, not so, like what's coming in, what's going out, and then I'll set goals for myself, like real big picture goals. It was actually one of the things that you shared, Skylar, that thing that kind of broke down. Here's what I'm going to earn, and here are the different ways I can earn it, and here's how I'm going to use it. So I took those big buckets and I kind of wrote down. I don't remember what that model was called, but that's what I would do, is say high level, I want to earn this much. I'm going to pay this much in taxes. I'm going to give this much away. And then here's how much I'm going to spend on kind of living expenses. Here's how much we're going to invest. And it hasn't been perfect, but just the fact that I'm looking at it and setting a target and keeping track of it has been huge. Yeah. So that's what I'd say I'm doing more than anything else. And yeah, like the banks will make me submit like, personal net worth statements and things like that. So, that's another thing that forces me to do it at least once a year.
At least once a year. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what you already given us some great pointers, but, again, kind of talking to the person that maybe is, at that 500,000 or maybe $1 million net wealth, and they're trying to get to 10, what's a general guidance that you would give them on their journey there?
For me, like what I've done is just invested in myself and stick with it. Right. Like I've been doing the same thing. It's not the same thing, but I've been with the same company, focused on generally the same outcome for close to 20 years now. And it's just like, you see those curves where it's like, okay, it's going to really start to go up. And that's what I think has differentiated me from some other people that have maybe bounced around some more. So I think it's just kind of like make a plan and stick with it. Because I think when you hop around too much, whether it's with your career or with investing, that's when you're going to stunt your growth.
Yep. I agree. All right. Last part, giving. How I know that, I know giving's personally important to you and your family, but I know it's a big part of what you guys do in your business too. Um, how are you giving today, and how did you come about making it that big a part of your life?
My wife deserves most of the credit for this, Sarah. So she's got a huge heart. So I shouldn't just say I'm along for the ride. I'm her partner in this, but this is something she's really passionate about. As you know, she's started a nonprofit that helps foster kids. It was actually, I don't know how long it's been now. It's probably been close to 12, 13, 14 years, just after CareerPlug started. And it's grown significantly. So we definitely give there. There's a lot of other causes we care about: education, environment. As far as in the workplace, my whole thing was just like, look, if I'm going to be giving, let's kind of pull it into the company and make them participate and feel like they're part of it.
Yeah.
So that, we did it back when we had an office. We had like a Toys for Teens drive. That was like get the teenagers anything they want for Christmas that in foster care. We'd bring all the presents to our office, and our team would help wrap them and deliver them. So it's like getting them involved in that. We do 100% donation matching. So if people have a cause they care about, we'll match that. I have some employees in particular who are really passionate about that benefit. And then there's something that I actually want to do. Again, I'm glad you asked that. We've done sort of in the past like a Q4 sort of incentive program where we'll set a big target to finish the year strong. And then the team will choose a beneficiary organization and say, hey, if we hit this, then we're going to donate this much money to this organization. And then there'll be another kind of celebratory bonus for the team as well. So those are some of the things that I'd say that have worked really well for us.
Yeah, love it. And why do you think it's important for leaders to be givers?
Well, I think you got to model, like you have to model what, the right behavior, right? Like if you're not a giver, I think you're a taker. And in my experience, givers are better leaders than takers, wouldn't you say? So I think that you're giving such an important part of a team dynamic, right? I think if you're not seeing that at the top, and you're seeing someone's really just doing it for them, and what can they get out of it? What can I get out of this resource, this team? Then it's demotivating.
Yeah.
Whereas if you do it the other way, it can be energizing.
Yeah. Man, I'm grateful for this conversation. Anything else just in general you want to share with the team that maybe you think we should talk about that we haven't?
I'll share one more thing.
Yeah.
I never raised any money. I don't have any investors, which is rare for a tech company. The only thing I would just say is like there's this perception, I feel like, that's like, hey, well, if I'm going to go start a business, I've got to raise money, especially if you're in the technology world. It's not true. It will probably take you longer, but for me, it was worth the ride. And because with the investors, there comes some strings that are attached to that, and you do lose some of your freedoms and things. You do get a lot of resources, and so it's certainly a trade-off, and one that I've thought about quite a bit. But for me, it's been best to stay bootstrapped. And I'm not saying that you should be bootstrapped, but I just wanted you to know it's an option, and there's a lot you can do with that.
Yeah. Well, how can we connect with you or stay in touch with what you guys got going on?
I'm not huge on social media, but my company is called CareerPlug. I have a book that Skylar told you about, how to hire. You can find it on Amazon or wherever else. And you can connect with me on LinkedIn. Clint Smith CareerPlug is the handle. And if there's anything I can help you out with, anyone that's part of Skylar's network, a friend of Skylar's is a friend of mine. So I'd love to help out however I can.
Thanks, man. All right. If you listen, I didn't charge anybody to be a part of this. So if you think you got some value and you care to be a giver and give a little bit, please visit our webpage there where the corporate battlefield is hosted, and donate through our PayPal or Venmo links. We give 100% of everything we collect to teachers in financial need. And I mean, Clint's passionate. He was a teacher. He's passionate about it. I think these people, I think it's a true servant role. I mean, they're not making enough money to make it really worth their time. It's the passion they have of making our children bigger and better and better for this world. that they're doing it for. And so any way we can help them, we try to. So I appreciate everybody being a part of this conversation. And Clint, I really am grateful for the time that you invested in us and just giving us so much value.
Yeah, let's sweeten the deal. Whoever donates for you, I'll double it. I'll match it. And
100% match.
100% match. I'll support you guys in that way too, because I'm passionate about education. I just opened a school down in Costa Rica, so whenever I can invest in teachers' education, I love the opportunity and love to support you and what you're doing as well.
Awesome. Thanks.